The cake sat untouched at the center of the table, its 40 candles glowing like silent accusations. Around me, guests shifted uncomfortably, their polite smiles faltering as they realized what was unfolding. My husband of 15 years stood across the room, his arm wrapped around a woman I had never seen before. 2 children clung to her side, watching me with wide, curious eyes. "Everyone," David began, his voice steady, as if he wasn't dismantling my entire life in front of friends, neighbors, and colleagues. "I'd like you to meet Vanessa, my wife of 3 years. And these are our children, Emma and Jack." The room fell silent, the kind of silence that presses on your ears and prickles your skin. I looked around. Some faces showed shock. Others, with downcast eyes, revealed they already knew. But what David didn't realize, what none of them knew, was that I had uncovered his betrayal months earlier. And tonight wasn't just my birthday, it was the day I had been preparing for. As our eyes locked across the room, I smiled, not the smile of someone broken, but the calm expression of a woman who already held the upper hand. "How thoughtful of you to finally introduce us," I said, reaching for the knife beside my cake. "Now, let me introduce you to something of mine. What would you do if everything you believed in turned out to be a lie? How far would you go to reclaim your truth?" 6 months earlier, my life looked perfect, or so everyone thought. I was a corporate attorney with a thriving career, living in a beautiful colonial home in the suburbs. My husband's prestigious consulting job had us traveling often, surrounded by friends, and never worrying about finances. After years of failed attempts to start a family, we had accepted childlessness and embraced the freedom it gave us. "You're so lucky," my sister Megan reminded me over one of our monthly lunches. "David is such a catch. Remember how jealous my friends were when you married him?" I nodded absently, pushing my salad around my plate. Something felt wrong. David's business trips were becoming longer and more frequent. When he was home, he seemed distant, always on his phone, slipping into another room for private calls. "Earth to Eliza," Megan teased, waving her hand in front of my face. "What's going on with you? You seem a million miles away." "Just work stress," I lied. "We're in the middle of a big merger." But the truth was different. I felt it in the hollow ache every time David kissed me goodbye, in the way his eyes no longer truly met mine when he said he loved me. Small details, yet together they painted a picture I wasn't ready to confront. After lunch, I drove home through our quiet, affluent neighborhood. The elegant houses stood proud and pristine, hiding whatever secrets lay inside, much like my own home. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed David's car already parked there, odd, since he'd told me he'd be in meetings all day. I slipped inside quietly and froze when after heard his voice through the closed office door. "I miss you, too, sweetheart." "Yes, I'll figure it out soon. Kiss the kids for me." My breath caught. Kids? What kids? Then came the final blow. "I love you, Vanessa, more than anything." The words landed like poison. My body went cold as I backed away, slipping out silently. With shaking hands, I started the car and drove aimlessly through the rain, tears blurring my vision. Have you ever felt the moment your entire world collapses? Would you confront the truth immediately or dig deeper before making a move? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss more stories like this one. They say ignorance is bliss, but once you see the truth, there's no going back. For the next week, I played the role of the perfect wife while secretly becoming a detective in my own marriage. When David left for another business trip, I finally had the chance to uncover the answers I was searching for. The obvious places revealed nothing. He was too cautious for that. But tucked away in the back of his filing cabinet, behind years-old tax returns, I discovered a folder marked Property Records, Chicago. We never owned property in Chicago. Inside, I found a deed for a house purchased 3 years earlier under David's name and a woman named Vanessa Collins. Alongside it were mortgage statements, utility bills, and school enrollment forms for 2 children, Emma and Jack Collins Harrington. My husband had another family, another life, another wife. I sat on our bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, feeling oddly calm. The tears had stopped, replaced by something colder, sharper, and more deliberate. That night, I called my oldest friend, Rachel. "I need a private investigator," I said as soon as she answered. "Eliza, what's happened?" "Everything," I replied. "And I'll need your help." 3 days later, I met Thomas Chen, a retired detective now working as a PI in a quiet coffee shop 2 towns away. "Mrs. Harrington, are you sure you want this?" he asked after hearing my story. "Sometimes the truth is harder than not knowing." I held his gaze. "The truth is already worse than anything I imagined. Now, I need proof." Over the next month, Thomas provided steady updates, photos of David with his Chicago family, records of a marriage certificate dated just 2 years after ours, confirming him a bigamist, school files for the children, bank statements showing nearly half his income diverted to support them. The most damning was a life insurance policy naming Vanessa as the sole beneficiary, valued at $2 million. "He's been building this double life for years," Thomas explained during our final meeting. "From what I can tell, neither family knows the other exists." He told them he works in international sales to explain his absences. "How is this even possible today?" I asked. "People believe what they want to believe," Thomas said, gently, "and your husband is exceptionally cautious. Separate phones, emails, credit cards, everything." I nodded, collecting the thick file of evidence. "Thank you. This is exactly what I needed." As I turned to leave, Thomas called out, "Mrs. Harrington, whatever you're planning, be careful." I looked back with a smile that didn't touch my eyes. "I'm past being careful. Would you confront your spouse immediately? Or would you wait, carefully planning your next move?" Most people rush into revenge. They act in anger, making mistakes that leave them exposed. I wouldn't make that mistake. For 2 more months, I played the role of the oblivious wife. I greeted David warmly after his supposed business trips, listened to his lies about meetings and conference calls, all while quietly dismantling our shared life. Piece by piece. First came the finances. As a lawyer, I knew how to protect myself. I documented everything, copied records, and shifted my money into accounts he couldn't touch. Then I met Bernard, the top divorce attorney at my firm. I showed him the evidence of David's bigamy. "This is extraordinary," Bernard said, scanning the documents. "In my career, I've rarely seen a case this clear. He's committed multiple crimes. I don't just want a divorce," told him. "I want him to lose everything." Bernard took off his glasses, studying me. "Eliza, I understand your pain, but revenge rarely delivers the satisfaction people expect." "This isn't about satisfaction," I answered. "It's about justice." Next, I turned to my support network. I carefully chose who to confide in: my sister Megan, Rachel, and my colleague Julia, people I trusted fully, who could stand by me in what came next. "I can't believe this," Megan said angrily, scanning the evidence. "My own brother, living a whole second life all these years. What are you going to do?" Rachel asked. I laid out my plan, watching their expressions shift from shock to reluctant admiration. "It's detailed," Julia finally said, her voice steady but cautious, "and definitely risky." "Do you think it will work?" I asked. They exchanged quick glances before Megan answered. "If anyone can make it succeed, it's you." The last piece fell into place when David brought up my upcoming 40th birthday. One evening, he suggested we throw a party, something meaningful. To mark the occasion, I looked up from my book, heart racing despite my calm expression. "That sounds wonderful. Why don't you organize it? Invite all our friends, make it a surprise." He seemed pleased with my excitement, unaware of the careful calculation behind my smile. "Any special requests?" he asked. "Just one," I replied. "I want it to be unforgettable, something no one will ever forget." "How far would you go to reveal someone who betrayed you? Would you prefer a private confrontation or a public reckoning?" I needed to fully understand my opponent. 3 weeks before my birthday, I took a day off and drove to Chicago. I had memorized Vanessa's routine from Thomas's surveillance notes. On Thursday afternoons, she volunteered at her children's school library while a neighbor looked after them. I found her exactly as expected, shelving books in the bright, welcoming library. She was attractive in a modest way, chestnut hair tied back, simple clothes, minimal makeup. She looked about 8 years younger than me. I approached directly. "Excuse me, are you Vanessa?" She looked up with a warm smile. "Yes. Can I help you find something?" "Actually, I'm writing an article on Dole Korea families." I lied smoothly. "One of the teachers said you might be open to sharing your experience, balancing family life with your husband's travel schedule." Her face brightened. "Oh sure, I'd be glad to help, though I'm not sure how interesting my story is." We sat at a small corner table, and I discreetly turned on my phone's recorder. "So, tell me about your family," I prompted. "Well, there's me, my husband David, and our 2 children, Emma and Jack," she began, showing me photos on her phone. "David works in international sales, so he's gone a lot. It's difficult for the kids, but we manage." "How did you 2 meet?" I asked, keeping a professional smile, though my stomach tightened. "At a conference in Boston about 4 years ago," she said, blushing lightly. "It was very romantic. He was giving a presentation, and we connected instantly. He was going through a divorce at the time." I nodded, holding my expression steady. "Divorce, of course," that's what he had told her. "We married fairly quickly. Some thought it was too fast," she continued. "But when you know, you just know." "Absolutely," I agreed. "And with his travel, how often is he away?" "About 2 weeks each month," she sighed. "It's hard, but he says he's working toward something better for us. He's even mentioned cutting back soon so he can be home more." As she spoke, I studied her. There was no trace of deceit in her eyes, no sign she realized she was part of something cruel. She was simply another victim loving the same man who had once deceived me. After about half an hour, I ended the conversation, thanking her for her time. "This was nice," she said. "Most days I just talk to the kids. Adult conversation is a treat." As I walked away, she called after me. "I didn't catch which magazine you're writing for." "Deception Monthly," I replied without turning back. That night, in my hotel room, I replayed the recording. The tears I'd kept back finally surfaced. Not for David. I had stopped mourning him long ago, but for Vanessa and her children, whose lives I was about to dismantle. For a moment, I thought about abandoning the plan, letting go, starting new, allowing them to live in ignorance. But then I remembered the life insurance policy in her name, the years of lies, the future taken from me. No, they deserved the truth as much as I had, and David deserved every consequence that awaited him. Would you warn the other woman before exposing everything? Or is her suffering simply part of the cost of justice? My birthday fell on a Saturday that year, perfect timing. David had thrown himself into party planning with unusual energy, confirming my suspicion that he saw it as an opportunity. Our spacious backyard would host about 50 guests, my colleagues, neighbors, college friends, and family. "I've invited a few business contacts too," he mentioned casually over dinner. 1 week before the event, I smiled when he said, "People I think you'd enjoy meeting." "How thoughtful." "Anyone I know?" I asked. "No, they're from my Chicago office. You'll like them though." "Chicago office, of course." I nodded politely, hiding the rush of my heartbeat behind a sip of wine. He was finally about to connect his worlds, though not in the way he imagined. The day before the party, I met with my 3 closest confidants for a final review of our plan. "Everything's ready on my side," Julia confirmed, showing me the official-looking papers in her briefcase. They weren't legally binding, but they appeared convincing enough. Rachel handed me a small flash drive. "The presentation is set. I tested it this morning on the outdoor projector while David was at the gym. And the special guests are confirmed," Megan added. "They'll arrive exactly as planned." I drew in a deep breath, looking at the women who had carried me through these last months. "Thank you all. I couldn't do this without you." "Nervous?" Rachel asked softly. "No," I realized with some surprise. "I just want this finished." That night, David and I shared a bed for the last time. He wrapped his arms around me, whispering about making my birthday memorable. I stayed awake, listening to his steady breathing, remembering when it had been a comfort instead of a reminder of betrayal. 15 years of marriage. Years I could never reclaim. Morning arrived with flawless weather, clear skies, mild air, a soft breezes, if even nature approved of what was about to happen. "Happy birthday, beautiful," David said, bringing me breakfast in bed. "Today is going to be amazing." "It certainly will," I agreed, returning his kiss with a practiced smile. "It certainly will be." "What's the deepest betrayal you can imagine? And what would justice look like?" By 6 o'clock, the backyard was transformed. Strings of lights hung from the trees, shining over tables draped in white linen. A small stage displayed a projection screen, ready for what guests assumed would be a heartfelt tribute to my 40 years. Soft music played while servers moved through the crowd with champagne and appetizers. Ad had chosen my outfit, carefully, a crimson dress that conveyed strength and composure, not pity. My hair was pinned up, diamond earrings catching the light. As I moved They had been a gift from David on our 10th anniversary. Guests arrived steadily, offering birthday wishes and compliments on the setting. David played his role well, hand placed on my back as we greeted everyone. "You've outdone yourself," I told him honestly, impressed by the atmosphere. He beamed with pride. "Only the best for my wife." By 7:30, I noticed him checking his watch, eyes fixed on the entrance. I knew exactly who he was waiting for. "Expecting someone?" I asked casually. "Just a few colleagues running late," he replied, kissing my cheek. Right on time. Rachel appeared at my side. "Eliza, there's a small issue with catering that needs you." I excused myself, giving David's arm a light squeeze. "Back in a minute, darling." Behind the catering tent, Megan and Julia waited. "They're here," Megan whispered. "Arrived about 2 minutes ago. Everyone in place?" I asked. Julia nodded. "Bernard has the legal team on standby. Thomas is watching the exits. Police have been informed, but they won't step in unless absolutely needed." "Let's move forward," I said, straightening my shoulders. We returned separately, blending into the crowd. I positioned myself so I could watch David without drawing immediate attention. And there they were, Vanessa, looking uneasy but composed in a blue dress, holding hands with 2 children. My chest tightened at the sight. The girl, Emma, carried David's eyes. The boy, Jack, his smile. David welcomed them warmly, too focused on his role to notice the subtle shifts around him as my allies guided guests into position. I approached, slowly, champagne glass in hand, Rachel and Julia nearby. "David," I called clearly across the now quiet crowd. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your guests?" He turned, his expression calm though his eyes betrayed concern. "Eliza, these are my colleagues from Chicago, Vanessa Collins and her children." "Colleagues," I repeated, extending my hand to Vanessa. "How interesting. I'm Eliza Hare, wife of 15 years. Confusion flickered across her face. "Wife, but David has been divorced for years." Her voice faltered as she looked between us. "That's what he told you, isn't it?" I said evenly, just as he once told me he was single, childless, and working in consulting. The color drained from David's face as he understood what was happening. "Eliza, this isn't the right time or place," he started. "I disagree," I cut in. "I think my birthday party is the perfect time for honesty, don't you?" By then, every conversation in the room had stopped. Guests turned their attention to the scene. "What's going on?" Vanessa asked, pulling her children protectively closer. David's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. "I can explain everything." "Please do," I invited, gesturing toward the silent crowd. "We're all very interested in your explanation. How do people react when their double life collapses in public, with anger, excuses, or desperate attempts at control?" "This is a misunderstanding," David insisted, his once charming smile strained. "Eliza and I have been separated for years. The divorce just hasn't been finalized yet for tax purposes." I laughed, the sound sharp in the heavy silence. "That's your story. Interesting. Because I have our joint tax returns from last year right here." I nodded toward Julia, who handed me a folder. "And these," I continued, "are property records showing David purchased a house in Chicago 3 years ago with Vanessa Collins." I laid the documents on the table. "A house he bought while still married to me and still living here." Vanessa stepped forward, her face pale. "David told me his divorce was finalized 4 years ago." "There never was a divorce filing," I clarified. "Not even a separation. David and I have shared this house, this bed, this life for 15 years. Murmurs spread through the guests. David's expression hardened as he realized there was no way out. "Vanessa, take the kids to the car," he ordered sharply. "This is some sick joke." "The only joke is how long you thought you could keep this deception alive," I replied. Then, turning to Vanessa, "I only discovered you 6 months ago. Your marriage, your children, everything has been hidden from me." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "Is this true? Are you still married to her?" "Technically, yes," David muttered. "Technically," she repeated in disbelief. "We have a marriage certificate. We have children, which makes him a bigamist," I added. "A criminal offense in Illinois, and here." The children grew upset. The little girl clung to her mother's dress while the boy looked at David in confusion. "Dad, what's happening?" he asked. That single word, Dad, sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. Old friends shook their heads in disbelief. "I think it's time for the presentation," I announced, nodding to Rachel at the projector. The screen lit up with a carefully prepared montage photos of David and me over 15 years, alongside time-stamped images of him with his second family. Documents followed: financial transfers, the fraudulent marriage certificate, the life insurance policy. For 3 years, I narrated, David has maintained 2 households, 2 marriages, and he's financed it partly with my family's support and partly through investment fraud. At this, David's head jerked up. That's a lie, is it? I countered. Bernard, would you explain what we found? Bernard stepped forward, professional and composed in his tailored suit. Our investigation into Mr. Harrington's finances revealed he's been running an investment scheme, using clients from both his legitimate and fabricated companies. He's promised returns from businesses that don't exist. That was the turning point. In searching for proof of David's double life, we uncovered evidence of actual crimes. Several of the investors he deceived are here tonight, Bernard added, gesturing to 3 stunned men in the back. David himself had invited, unaware I'd already shared the evidence with them. David lunged toward me, rage twisting his face. You've been planning this. 2 security guards Thomas had hired stepped forward instantly, holding him back. Yes, David, I said calmly, though my heart pounded. I have been planning this just as you planned to juggle 2 families while defrauding investors. Have you ever seen someone's carefully built lies fall apart in an instant? What do you think happens to a person at that moment? The next hour unfolded like a precisely executed sequence of events. While David was restrained, Julia handed out evidence packets to the key people, the fraud victims. Vanessa's brother had come to support her, and 2 police officers stood quietly near the exit. Vanessa sank into a patio chair, her children clinging to her as she tried to process the unimaginable truth of her life. I approached her slowly, knowing how much pain this would cause, though she was as much a victim as I was. I'm sorry you found out like this, I said softly, but you deserve the truth. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at me. Did you know about us when I married him? No, I assured her. I only discovered everything 6 months ago. He told me he had no children and traveled often for work. Her son, Jack, stared at me with solemn eyes. Are you really married to my dad too? The simple question shattered something inside me. I knelt to his level. Yes, I am. But none of this is your fault. Your father made poor choices, not you. Bigamy and investment fraud aren't family issues, one officer replied evenly. They're crimes. Most guests left quietly, though a few stayed at the edges, unable to look away from the collapse of what had seemed a flawless life. My sister Megan arrived with a glass of water for Vanessa. There's a room inside where you and the children can have privacy, she offered. My sister thought you'd need some space. Vanessa looked at me in surprise. You prepared this for us. I knew it would be difficult, I explained. Especially for the children. I didn't want them to see everything. As Megan guided them inside, Bernard pulled me aside. The police will need statements from you and Mrs. Collins, other Mrs. Harrington. They're charging him with fraud now, but the bigamy case will need testimony. I nodded, watching David as he was escorted to the police car, his face pale. Our eyes met. I expected anger or a plea for mercy. Instead, I saw something else, a flicker of respect, maybe even admiration, for how thoroughly I had exposed him. He gave me a small, almost regal nod before stepping inside the car. My 40th birthday party was effectively over. Caterers packed up quietly, and the lights that had once felt festive now cast eerie shadows across the empty tables. Rachel found me sitting alone at the head table, a full glass of champagne untouched before me. You did it, she said simply, taking the seat beside me. I did, I agreed, staring at the space where the police car had been. So why don't I feel better? She placed her hand over mine. Because revenge doesn't heal wounds, it only stops the bleeding. We sat in silence before I finally raised my glass. To 40 and to starting over. But is revenge ever truly satisfying, or does it only create another kind of emptiness? The days after my birthday blurred with police statements, legal meetings, and media attention as David's double life became news. His fraud scheme was far larger than I imagined, nearly $3 million stolen from more than 24 victims. I avoided the media, retreating to a small rental home I had secured months earlier, just in case. Megan stayed with me those first nights, when sleep was impossible and doubts crept in. Did I do the right thing? I asked her one evening as we shared a bottle of wine. Those children will grow up with their father in prison. They would have grown up with a liar and a thief as their father either way, Megan reminded me. Now Vanessa can build an honest life for them. A week later, Vanessa surprised me by reaching out. We met at a quiet cafe between our homes, both of us nervous. I needed to see you, she explained as we settled with our coffee, to understand everything. What do you want to know? I asked. When did you start to suspect? What gave him away? I told her about the phone call I had overheard, the investigation that followed, and how I discovered her and the children. I first met you during that interview at the school library. The moment you saw the magazine article, your eyes widened. I knew you looked familiar. Then, unexpectedly, you laughed short, strained. We've been such fools. Not fools, I corrected. Victims. There's a difference. We ended up talking for hours, comparing stories about the man we had both loved. The birthday gifts he had given us were identical. The same romantic lines, even overlapping circles of friends, people who must have known, yet chose silence. How did I miss it? Vanessa admitted. There were signs, the calls he avoided. Weekends, he was unreachable. But I trusted him. So did I said quietly. For 15 years, before we parted that night, she squeezed my hand. Thank you, not for how you exposed him, but for making sure I knew the truth. Meanwhile, David's legal problems grew worse. Denied bail as a flight risk, he waited for trial in a county jail. His attorney, a polished shark in a designer suit, kept reaching out about a possible deal. He'll plead guilty to fraud if you drop the bigamy charge, Bernard told me after one conversation. He thinks it will lessen his sentence. What's your advice? I asked. Bernard considered. Fraud already carried heavy penalties. Adding bigamy wouldn't add much prison time. Then why does he care so much? I pressed. Image, Bernard explained. Fraud makes him a white-collar criminal. Bigamy makes him tabloid news. I slept on it before, deciding. The next morning, I told Bernard, I'll agree, but only if David signs away his parental rights. Vanessa must have full custody, with no chance of contest later. Bernard hesitated. That's letting him off easy. Are you sure? This isn't about him, I replied. It's about the kids. They deserve a clean break and a chance at normalcy. 2 days later, Vanessa called, her voice breaking. He signed. He gave up the kids without a fight. Something in me hardened at that final confirmation of David's character. Even his own children were pawns to him. What will you tell them when they're older? I asked. She paused, then answered, the truth they can handle. That their father made choices that hurt people, including them. That he's paying for those choices, and that none of it was their fault. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without dreaming of David. But how do you rebuild when your life was built on lies? How do you learn to trust again? Meanwhile, David had shifted from anger to desperate bargaining, trying to persuade the guards and then the officers that this was a misunderstanding. You can't arrest me, he argued as they cuffed him. This is a family issue. My 41st birthday came quietly, just as I wanted. No party, no spotlight, only dinner with close friends in my new downtown condo. The past year had reshaped me in ways I was still uncovering. The divorce had been surprisingly straightforward. I'd left the corporate law firm for a nonprofit helping women recover from trauma. The pay cut meant trading our suburban mansion for a city view condo, a choice that felt like freedom, not loss. To new beginnings, Rachel toasted, raising her glass. And to true friends, I added, grateful for the ones who stood by me. Later, alone on my balcony, I watched the city lights. My phone buzzed an unknown number. Happy birthday, Eliza. I underestimated you. My mistake. Even from prison, he had found a way to reach me. I wasn't shocked. David was always resourceful, but I deleted the message, blocked the number. He no longer had power over me. His sentencing had already passed. 12 years for fraud. I didn't attend. That chapter was closed. The next morning, I met Vanessa for our now regular coffee. She and the kids had moved back to Michigan, where she taught elementary school and slowly rebuilt her life. Emma asked about him yesterday, she said, stirring her latte. She wanted to know if bad people can ever become good again. What did you tell her? I asked. That everyone makes choices daily, and that real change is possible if someone truly wants it. She replied with a faint smile. I don't know if David will ever change, but I want her to believe in redemption. I nodded, appreciating her perspective. How are you, really? I asked. Some days are harder than others, she admitted, but we're doing okay. The kids are strong. And I've started dating again. That's wonderful, I said, genuinely glad for her. What about you? Anyone special? She asked. I shook my head. Not yet. Right now, I'm focusing on myself, learning who I am without David defining me. We hugged before partying, something unimaginable a year earlier. Two women connected by betrayal, but determined not to let it define them. That evening, I opened a large envelope in the mail. Inside was a legal document. David had signed over his share of our investment portfolio, nearly $1 million. A handwritten note was attached. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for what I did. You deserved better. David. I stood in my kitchen, staring at his familiar handwriting. Was this true remorse, or another manipulation? Did it even matter now? After some thought, I transferred the money into a trust for Emma and Jack's education. David had already taken their father from them. The least I could do was secure their future. That night, watching the sunset from my balcony, I recognized something profound. The woman who had once planned that elaborate revenge was no longer the woman I was becoming. That version of Eliza was fueled by anger and betrayal, however justified. This version, the one sipping wine beneath the stars, was moving toward something different. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding, and most importantly, strength. I had lost a husband, but found myself, and that, I realized, was the truest form of revenge. In the years that followed, the story of my infamous birthday became less about betrayal and more about transformation. My nonprofit grew, and I launched programs to support women rebuilding their lives after deep personal losses, whether financial, emotional, or marital. Each journey was unique, but the core remained. Reclaiming your story, Vanessa and I stayed in touch. We exchanged birthday messages and occasional updates. Her children were thriving. Emma was blossoming into a gifted musician, and Jack excelled in mathematics. They knew the truth about their father without being burdened by it. David served 8 years of his 12-year sentence before being released on parole. Through mutual contacts, I learned he worked as a junior accountant, his former professional circle forever closed. His downfall was undeniable, but it wasn't about him anymore. It was about me, about Vanessa, about moving forward. 5 years after that pivotal birthday, I met Michael, a widower with his own story of loss and renewal. Our relationship grew on honesty, respect, and a shared acceptance that life rarely follows the path we expect. In one of our first serious conversations, I told him everything about David, the revenge, and my journey. That must have been incredibly hard, Michael said, holding my hand. It was, I agreed, but I'm not that woman anymore. I'm someone who survived and grew. 2 years later, at our wedding, Vanessa stood by my side as a bridesmaid and friend who understood survival's complexities. Emma, now 16, performed a violin piece she had composed herself for the ceremony. I had learned that life wasn't about perfect revenge, it was about perfect resilience. So I asked you, what would you do with a second chance? How would you rewrite your story?